Hey everyone, I'm Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I'm showing you a recipe for baked Alaska, a frozen dessert. It's ice cream and sponge cake, and it is covered in this cloud of meringue and then baked. So the meringue is like an insulator. It gets really toasty. The ice cream stays frozen. It's a really fun recipe, and this episode is brought to you by KitchenAid, who is my kitchen partner, and I'm gonna show you some of their amazing appliances to make the baked Alaska, like their smart oven, freezer, dishwasher. It's gonna be really fun. So ingredient-wise, I'm missing ice cream because I'm keeping it in the freezer so it stays frozen. So this is an ice cream-based dessert. By the ice cream, I have, strawberry ice cream that I bought from the store. Then I have fresh strawberries, some granulated sugar, a lemon, cream of tartar, all-purpose flour, 3 large eggs separated, so I have whites and yolks, granulated sugar, baking powder. And then here in this measuring cup, I have a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil and a 1/4 cup of milk. So these are my ingredients for the sponge and the ice cream. And then later on, once that's frozen and ready to go, I'll show you the meringue. As far as special equipment, I'm gonna use my KitchenAid stand mixer. And then beyond that, I just need a 1/4 sheet tray for the sponge cake. And I have these small 4-ounce bowls that I'm gonna use to mold the individual ice creams. If you don't have these, you just use like a muffin tin. That's great too. This episode is brought to you by KitchenAid. So KitchenAid is my partner in building this beautiful new kitchen. They outfitted all the major appliances from the dishwasher to the microwave to the fridge, and particularly the smart oven, which I've been loving baking in. It's so easy to use and everything has been coming out amazing. And this recipe really shows it off because the baked Alaska goes into the oven a bunch of different times. So I'm really excited to show it to you. And thank you to KitchenAid for all of the appliances and especially the oven. I love having this rack slide out. It makes it feel much safer to put stuff in the oven.
3 racks is pretty nice.
It really does fit so much stuff. Having the bottom drawer freezer is so nice. And what I love is I can fit a whole pie on a sheet tray in there.
What about all this?
I know, that's when I don't have all that other stuff in it. My KitchenAid Smart Oven is on 350, so that's preheating. I have a rack in the center position, and I'm just gonna pinch off the hulls of the strawberries. If you're using like less ripe strawberries, then go ahead and cut out the center of that hull. So I'm just gonna slice them into like between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch thick. It doesn't really matter. Often with baked Alaska, you see like chocolate. I mean, it could be any flavor because it could be any flavor ice cream, but I really like doing a fruit version. The smart oven is smart because it's Wi-Fi enabled. So I get like alerts, like if I'm upstairs or doing something else, I get alerts that my oven has reached temperature or that the timer's gone off, which is huge because it's not uncommon for me to forget to set a timer. Oh my God, the brioche is still in the oven. Oh my God, hold on. I have to go take it out. Oh no. Strawberries are gonna go on here. I have a half sheet pan. I'm gonna toss these with 2 tablespoons of sugar. Baked Alaska is definitely one of those things that can go really sweet if you're not careful about the sugar. So I try not to add too much. The ice cream is already pretty sweet. So just toss all that together. So in the oven, these will soften, they'll start to release their juices, and then that dry heat from the oven will concentrate the juices and turn it into this like thick kind of syrupy mixture. It's gonna be really good, and that'll take like 20 to 25 minutes. They shrunk a little bit because they had all that moisture driven off and the juices kind of pooled and got really thick and syrupy. And I want to loosen them from the baking sheet, and I'm going to just kind of get everything together so I can get everything coated in the juices. And they almost sort of like candied, so that is going to mean that they don't harden in like this in an icy kind of texture. They're going to stay sort of soft and even get a little bit chewy. So to this I'm going to add about a teaspoon of grated lemon zest, so that zest will just brighten everything up. If you wanted to skip the roasting of strawberries, you absolutely can. Just use any ice cream flavor of your choice. I just like this version because I like adding the fresh fruit. So this just gets mixed together. I have about a 1/2 cup total. It's just nice to have these like, you know, sort of chewy, super strawberry-y pieces studded throughout the ice cream. So I'm going to put this into a bowl and chill it down and get it cold. I have one that I roasted this morning. It's already cold, so I'll bring that out. And before I fold the mixture together and fill the molds, I'm going to line them. I'm going to take a piece of plastic and just press it down into the bottom of each bowl. Work it into all of the curves so that it fills out the entire shape. But I'm not baking them in the molds. The molds just go into the freezer. They get unmolded before they're baked again. So I have my strawberry ice cream here. Use whatever brand you like. However, this is nearly a quart, and I only need half of this, so I'm gonna weigh out half. You can use a scoop or just a big spoon. And so I didn't let this soften at room temp. I'm just scooping it cold into this bowl. I'm gonna go until I get 14 ounces. So now that I have my ice cream scooped, I'm working the ice cream against the side of the bowl, trying to get it spreadable. So I don't want it to warm up. I just want to work it so that the texture smooths out a little bit. It starts to look like a thick batter, sort of, almost like you're making soda bread or that kind of thing. It's nice and spreadable, and the texture has smoothed out some. So I am now going to add my roasted strawberries and that syrupy liquid. So scrape that in. So I'm just folding a few times to incorporate. I don't want to over stir because I don't want it to melt. So at this stage, I'm good. I'm going to divide this among my 4 molds. These are generous portions, I would say. I could definitely see splitting these between 2 people. So I'm going to go ahead and smooth these. Okay, and then before I pop them in the freezer, I'm going to fold the plastic wrap up and over. And that is so I can easily and quickly flatten the surface. So I want that to be flat because that's where the sponge is going to go. I want them to freeze really solid. That'll take about an hour because it's small portions. So this is a thing you can do in advance. And then while that's freezing, I'm going to bake my sponge cake. And then we put together. Whenever I'm making a frozen dessert that has like a cake component, if it's like an ice cream cake or baked Alaska or something else, I usually opt for a sponge cake. So sponge cake is like an egg-based cake, and that is opposed to a butter cake where you start with creaming together the butter and sugar. And that's because an egg-based sponge cake doesn't freeze hard and get really solid the way that a butter-based cake would. So I have my KitchenAid mixer here because I'm gonna whip the egg whites. So sponge cake is lightened by egg whites typically. Well, I'm gonna set my oven to 350. And it's a really, really easy sponge cake. I have my quarter sheet tray here with a piece of parchment paper in the bottom. So I'm gonna start with my 3 yolks. So the recipe is 3 eggs total, but separated. So I have my 3 yolks. I have a half a cup of sugar total, and I'm gonna put half in with the yolks and save the other half for beating the egg whites. So you don't have to beat this really thoroughly, just wanna sort of combine everything and get it a little bit lightened. And then I have all in one measuring cup, a quarter cup of neutral oil. You can just use like any vegetable oil, and a quarter cup of milk. So chiffon cake has like added liquid to it. It's just a really, really light, delicious cake. Okay, so I'm gonna stream in these other liquid ingredients. Then I add my dry. I have 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour, and I'm adding to that 3/4 of a teaspoon kosher salt and a half plus 1/8 of a teaspoon baking powder. So in go the dry ingredients. Whisk that together until it's smooth. You don't want any lumps. So that's the base of the batter. And then this mixture gets lightened with my beaten egg whites. So in go the 3 egg whites. To help stabilize the egg whites, I'm adding 1/8 of a teaspoon cream of tartar. And I'm gonna start on medium-low until the egg whites are broken up. And then once they're white and foamy, I'm gonna start to add my sugar gradually. And that's gonna help to whip a nice, stable egg foam. And I'm gonna go until I have firm peaks. So this is sort of like a I would say this is a firm peak, a little bit between medium and firm. So now these are the right consistency to fold into my batter. Start by scraping about half of the egg whites into the bowl. This is just to lighten the batter, make it super airy. What's nice about chiffon cake is, yes, it's lightened by the egg whites, but it also has that baking powder in there. So it's just like an extra assurance that you're gonna have a light cake that's gonna rise. So if your egg whites are maybe like a little bit soft or you didn't quite hit that right point, you still have the leavening from the baking powder. So then the second half of the egg whites get folded in. If you over whip the eggs, you'll know, because as they sit, they will become not smooth. They'll take on like a grainy sort of look, and that's how you know you've overbeaten them. So you want to avoid that. So this goes into my prepared pan, and then I have my little offset spatula to help smooth this into an even layer. One quick little step before this goes into the oven is I tap it on the countertop, because there's some really large air bubbles and I want to pop those because I just want a nice even texture throughout the cake. So I'm going to give it a sharp tap on the counter. I can already see some little air bubbles that are going to pop. Now into the oven, and this will bake for about 15 minutes, and I just want the top to be evenly golden brown and springy to the touch. So I'm setting the time for my phone to 15 minutes, and it will alert me. So we'll come back, and then I'll show you how to put together the filling of the baked Alaskas. My sponge cake is totally cool to the touch on the bottom, so I am ready to punch out the bases of the baked Alaskas. I have a set of ring cutters, and I chose a ring cutter that fits sort of right into the bowls that I used as my molds, right where the ice cream sits, so that it will fit exactly onto the baked Alaskas. We're going to invert them. So I'm going to use this. If you don't have a ring cutter, you can just use like a water glass or something that fits that basic shape. So I'm going to punch out, I only need 4 of these, so I'm going to have a little bit of extra sponge. If you wanted to, you could cut out, like all of the sponge and punch out circles across the entire sheet and then freeze them, and then you have them for baked Alaskas pretty much whenever. So now we have these really cute, sort of like perfect little rounds of sponge. Freeze this for another time, punch out circles, do whatever you want with this. This is just extra. It's hard to make a smaller quantity of sponge than that. So that was just with 3 eggs, quarter sheet tray. Any smaller quantity is just kind of not practical, but don't waste that. Now I have that small offset spatula so I can smooth the ice cream surface if necessary, because I want there to be a flat base for the sponge cake. Just that little piece of sponge goes right over top, just like that. This serves 4. If you wanted to make large format, you can double the recipe, make it for 8, and use like a quart-sized bowl. These go back into the freezer just to keep them frozen while I make the meringue. The meringue for baked Alaska is typically an Italian meringue, and that is a meringue where we, instead of just adding sugar directly into the egg whites, we cook the sugar to a particular temperature. This makes like a very stable, very glossy meringue that is going to beautifully cover the baked Alaskas. Before I start though, I'm going to preheat my oven now to 500. So I'm going to go into my KitchenAid app, put it on 500. Okay, there we go. So the last trip into the oven for the baked Alaskas is just to toast the meringue. Often you see the meringue and a baked Alaska just torched, which you can do, but really the idea of a baked Alaska is that it is baked once the meringue goes on. So 500 just means that the meringue will toast really, really quickly on the outside and it will set, but it will not, the heat will not have time to like penetrate the meringue and warm the ice cream in the middle. So for an Italian meringue, we are going to cook the sugar on the stovetop, and I'm going to use the KitchenAid induction cooktop, which I am so happy we decided to get induction for this house. I love it so much. I think second to the oven, it's like my favorite appliance. I love cooking on induction. It's so precise and easy to control and so easy to clean, which is maybe my favorite thing about it. So I have my half a cup of sugar. Then I'm going to do like a glug of light corn syrup, just about a tablespoon. I don't like to pre-measure it because it's too sort of sticky. So I eyeball that. And the corn syrup, I'm using a small amount. It's really just there to prevent crystallization. So it keeps the sugar syrup from going grainy. Then 1/4 cup of water. I have my instant read thermometer right here. While this is cooking, I'm going to start to whip my egg whites. I have 3 large egg whites. Then I also have a pinch of salt that I'm going to add to the egg whites and 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. So using my heat-proof spatula, I'm going to come over here to the stove. Cooking caramel on induction is it just heats things so efficiently. And so like caramels cook faster, custards and puddings set faster. So I'm only stirring to dissolve the sugar, and it's almost at a boil. So once it starts to boil, I'm gonna stop stirring. So you need to have the egg whites foamy and about like doubled in volume before you start to add the sugar. Otherwise they won't whip up. So I'm gonna get that going. And then I'll take the temperatures. So I'm at around 220, and this has to go until it hits 240. I'm only at like 225 now, and I want this syrup to go to 240. And so once it gets up to like 235, I'll turn the mixer back on because I want that going pretty much at full speed when I go to stream the syrup into the egg whites. And you want to do that immediately. You don't want to really let it go above 240. Okay, so I'm at 235. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. I'm at 235. I'm going to turn the mixer back on. And the trick is that you want to pour the syrup gently down the side of the bowl so that it doesn't hit the whisk as it's turning. 240, okay. And now I'm going to slowly stream this into the bowl. Remember, you don't want to hit the whisk. So I want to let this continue to whip. I'm going to turn the speed up all the way, and I want this to go until I have like super firm, glossy, stiff, dense peaks. I'm almost there. Okay. So let's see what the texture that we have so far. All right, this looks really nice. I don't want to go much past this. In fact, I think I've whipped it enough. See that peak? That is a beautiful stiff peak. Looks great. So my oven is nearly heated. I'm at 465. We're going up to 500. And now I'm going to unmold the ice cream filling with that layer of sponge cake, and then we're going to cover them and bake them. So I have a rim baking sheet, a half sheet pan with a silpat. That's just for a little extra insulation. I'm going to grab my molds, and then we're going to cover them in the meringue. When you make an Italian meringue, it is a very stable meringue, so it can sit for a little bit at room temp and it'll be totally fine. You just don't want to, make it like an hour in advance, but a few minutes is fine. So when unmolding, just go ahead and tug down on the plastic wrap, and they should dislodge pretty easily. If they're super like frozen solid, like let's say you did this a day in advance, which you totally could, you might need to run it under like a little bit of warm water, but it should pop out. So working quickly, because these aren't like super solid, I'm gonna cover them. I'm just gonna add big dollops of meringue to the tops. Think of it like frosting a cake. And I wanna work this down and all the way around. I want the ice cream to be totally covered. That's really important. It's okay if there's some sponge peeking out, but you definitely want to cover all of the ice cream because otherwise it won't be insulated from the heat of the oven. So I have a little bit of extra meringue in case I need to add more. And I'm, again, working quickly, just using the offset spatula to cover everything. So this is obviously freeform. Sometimes you see baked Alaskas that have like piped meringue, which you can totally do. But I like the way that it looks just kind of loose and freeform. Just to make sure I have full coverage everywhere, I'm going to scrape the rest of the meringue over top. So you can see that 3 egg whites really still makes like a pretty generous amount of meringue. Plenty to cover all this. Into the oven, I'm going to watch these the entire time because they will toast rather quickly. So I think that at 500, these won't take more than like 2 minutes to really get some color on the outsides. So into the oven. So the meringue has great color on it, nice and toasty. Now these have to be served right away. You can see like there's some ice cream starting to melt out of that one. So I'm gonna get them off of the hot pan and onto serving plate. We're melting a little bit. These could have definitely frozen. My recommendation would be, if you're gonna make these, try to do the sponge cake and ice cream the night before, so they really have a chance to be like super solid frozen. I'm gonna spoon into one so we can see a cross section. We'll see how the meringue kind of like crackles open. So you can see the sponge, we have those roasted strawberries and this toasty meringue. Give it a taste. I love all the textures. I get like that burst of lemon zest from the strawberries. It has a really intense strawberry flavor. It's not too sweet. I think baked Alaska can often be really sweet because there's a lot of sugar in the meringue. It's really well balanced. And then I love kind of that final soft, like, you know, like sponginess in a good way of the cake on the bottom. I think this is like such a great celebration dessert. It's really festive, it's really fun. You could customize it for any time of year with any kind of ice cream you like. You can leave the fruit out, that's totally optional. And then because there are a lot of steps, it does make a lot of dishes. Hope you have the dishwasher. Everything gets loaded into the KitchenAid dishwasher, and you can see that we use a smart oven in like several different steps in all different ways. It toasted the meringue, baked the sponge evenly, roasted the strawberries. It's been a pleasure to cook in this kitchen. I want to thank my partner KitchenAid for outfitting this beautiful kitchen with so many wonderful appliances. I love the smart oven, and I love filming episodes of Dessert Person from the new kitchen. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, KitchenAid, and don't forget to like and subscribe.